This is a discussion with Ruth Chase Noland, recorded by Julia Schwenn for Historic Madison on September 13, 1982. Tape 1, Side 1. Mrs. Noland, could we talk about what it was like to be growing up in Madison in the early 1900s? Perhaps you could recount what you remember, the circumstances of your coming to Madison.
Well, I was born in Illinois and didn't come to Madison till much later.
What, about 1908, was it?
Yes, 1908 is when we moved to the Heights area.
Oh, but you'd been in Madison earlier than that. In another place in Madison, or did you come directly to the Heights?
No, my family came from New England.
Ah.
And we came to the Heights, as you say, in about 1908. But I was born in Chicago in 1895. But we came here earlier. One of the earliest recollections I have of the University Heights was the windmills. Every house of the few that were there had a windmill.
With a pump, I suppose. Is that
Well, to pump the water for the artesian water, I believe it wasn't really the water wasn't provided by the city.
No chlorine and fluoride.
No.
Good water.
Good water. And I forget all about the windmills until the other day, and I woke up and I heard the windmills in my recollection going. They all squeaked. And there were perhaps only really a half a dozen at that time. But it was something that I recollected later.
And essential to your operation at the time.
Yes.
Where did the Chase, where did you come? Where was your home in University Heights?
Well, it was right up on the top of the hill at Summit and Prospect.
Opposite where the Parsons now live, and maybe where that Keck home is, the very modern home is now. Is that Prospect? Yeah, I see where that would be. Now, no longer standing. Your home.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, then it's across. Yes, then it's. Yes, I know. Then across the street on the that would be on the sort of the south side of Prospect.
Yes.
I see.
And when we came really to the Heights was in 1908.
8 is what I think you said earlier in the Regent News.
Yes, that's right. It was 1908. And we bought a piece of land up at the top of the hill and built our home there. That is, my parents did. And next door was what is now next door was the home for the family until, well, it continued to be till my parents died, but in the meantime, I was married,
Oh,
and my father gave us the part of his garden.
how nice.
And so we were right, and I've been in that neighborhood, you see, for
Forever and ever.
almost seems that way.
You must have been about 12 or so when you came to Madison.
Yes.
Were you?
And I was thinking about the places and people. Gertrude Wilson, of course, has many recollections that I don't have, but I remember the woods and
It was quite wooded then, was it? The heights still quite
Yes.
wooded, and were there prairie flowers around? I would think flowers, a lot of
prairie flowers.
prairie
Yes.
flowers.
Not so much as in Illinois, the Illinois prairies that I was used to.
Yes, quite a spread.
Yes.
But lots of squirrels and I suppose rabbits and things. It was.
Chipmunks were my favorites. And I kept a record of their comings and goings for years.
Were you? I know you married an important scientist. Your husband,
Yes.
Noland, was a zoologist, right?
Lowell.
It was your father's name. Was
Wayland.
Chase? Yes.
Wayland
Totally.
Chase.
That was confusing a little.
Yes.
But did you yourself study? Were you a scientist?
Of sorts.
Down in the marshes,
Yeah.
below the university farm, as a beginning, I suppose.
So, but I can remember the hill folk, for instance, was a little group of the young people near the top of that hill.
What did you call it? The hill folks?
The hill folk. And the Buells, I'm thinking back across the Buells, and the Knowltons, and the Hillyers, and I can't think of everybody that was
The Turnars, did they have
Turnars.
children your age as well?
Well, they're in a different generation,
Yeah,
really.
what about the Stevens?
Well, Stevens, yes.
Were roughly your generation? The young folks?
Young folks, yes.
We live in their house now. That's
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Well, that's very interesting. I was thinking of the Mowers and
Is that Mauyers?
Maupr. And of course the Knowltons and the McGilvaries.
McGilvary.
Yes. That's what Mrs. Stevens, maybe it's the house you live in.
We live in the 1908 Arlington, down below the street a little bit in the old Stevens house. But you played. Most of these families had children, young people your age,
Yes.
that you were going to school with and playing with, I suppose.
Playing with.
Of course, you were 12 or 13 when you came. You were getting to think you were sort of beyond some childish play, I suppose.
Yes, I was very timid and shy, so I didn't get acquainted as easily as some people. But I knew, of course, Gertrude Wilson was the youngest in her family.
Yes.
And her next sister was Margaret, and she was my best friend, and got all acquainted. And then there was Anna Ely, Professor Ely's.
Was she roughly your age, or at least
Yes.
someone you had spent time with?
And as I say, we had the hill folk. And
I like that.
the boys used to tease us because the girls were the hill folk.
I see. No boys in that club.
Right. Insulated that way.
But did you play with the boys at all at that age? Not much.
They were teasing.
You call that playing?
Well, yes. The girls had their meetings. Like the Skinners had meetings, if they had ice cream, the boys would sneak in and try to get their refreshments.
Naughty.
Yes, naughty.
Did you make use of the lake Mendota at all? Did you swim at the Willows or elsewhere, or was not swimming a very popular thing to do?
I learned to swim for some time. I don't remember when I did it.
But that wasn't a thing you all did together in the summer, was to go down to the
No, I
beach?
don't think so.
I understand there was a steamboat on the lake,
Yes.
too. Did you ever go on that?
That was on Noland.
Oh, I see.
Yes, the steamboat was very interesting. Of course, when I came here, we came by train from Chicago, and I think my first recollection of Madison was that we had a horse and buggy and horse sort of taxi. And
Somebody told me that there was a stable down below someplace, maybe at the corner of Chamberlain and Kendall. Do you remember that?
yes, I remember.
And was that a sort of a community stable, or did it belong to one of the families?
Belonged to one of the
I
families.
see.
And
I think a person or two had horses and maybe a carriage, but generally speaking, would you call for a horse and carriage if you needed, the same as you would call for a taxi today?
well,
Not often, but
No.
could you do that?
I suppose we could. I know we did rent a horse and buggy, and I loved to drive, and we'd go out along the shores of Lake Mendota there. It's down at the Willows along that.
Along that drive.
And it's funny, I've almost forgotten it. It was a horse and buggy area, and then
Well, there were streetcars too, weren't there? Did they come out to
There's
Breeze
streetcars,
Terrace, or
yes.
or maybe out as far as the graveyards by the time you came
yes,
to Madison?
well, I can't be sure just how far they came, but they stopped at about along University Avenue, I think.
But if you wanted to go downtown and the weather was nice, would you walk, or would you go on the streetcar, or?
You got in a streetcar in the summer. They were open cars, so that you got a great pleasure out of the riding on the streetcars.
Yes.
Going downtown shopping or something.
Sounds like fun.
Yes.
There were I suppose what would have been called dry goods stores on the square, other kinds of
Yes.
hardware, I suppose.
Yes, there were. And, I'm trying to think. What I'm trying to think of is that we went to when we first came to Madison, we stayed at Mrs. Pierce's boarding house.
Oh, downtown would that be?
Downtown, for the first year, and
while your house was being built.
yes, and we stayed at the Mrs. Pierce's boarding house. That was one part. That's down on Pinckney Street.
I've seen a reference to that someplace.
Uh-huh.
Your whole family. That was your father, your mother, and did you have other children in the family? You were the only
I
one.
was the only one. And but I was thinking of the White City. Did you ever hear of the White City?
No, what was that?
Oh, it was wonderful. We'd go on the open streetcar down to near Chicago, and the White City was an amusement park, and it had so many different new things. I know that it had an Igorot little village, and it had the first moving picture that I would have seen. I think you got on and you were facing you were on the back of a railroad car and watching the scenery.
Oh, good. I like that. That must have been a real treat. You didn't get to do that often,
yes.
I suppose.
And there were big horses that I don't remember just what they did, but one of the lovely things was that they had John Philip Sousa's open their theater there and played there.
Right in the
It was my
back?
first meeting with them.
But there must have been theatrical and musical things on the campus, or at Fuller's Opera House was operating them, wasn't it? Did you ever go to things events on the campus when you were of a high school age? Do you remember?
Oh, yes. One nice thing was that they had an open-air theater back of what was Main Hall. And some Shakespearean plays, I remember.
The Ben Greet players,
The Ben
perhaps.
Greet players.
I've heard my husband has spoken of seeing them.
They were
Shakespearean troopers.
And it was a very lovely theater, really.
On the back of Bascom Hill, would that be on the downward slope toward the west, I suppose?
Yes, that's right. And these Ben Reed players were very much in entertainment.
Let's see, when you came, did you go to Randall School? Were you the right age for Randall School then? And it had been built, I think, about 1906, Randall Elementary School. Or where did you go to school?
I didn't go to school.
Oh, tutored at home?
I was tutored at home. But that's where it would be.
Some of your friends
My friends
went there.
went there.
Was your mother or your father your chief tutor, or neither?
Both, I guess. And
Your father was a professor of history, I think, or history and education, or do you remember?
Yes. But at that time, we lived, as I say, in Morgan Park. And then I guess I was about 12 then. And lost the train of thought.
But when you came here, you were still tutored after you were tutored here until you were. Did you ever go to public or private? Did you ever go to school?
Yes, I did. I went to the most remarkable school. It was called Fool's Retreat by the Madison High School people.
School for what is it?
Fool's Retreat.
Fool's Retreat. Ah, yes. University High School. Yes.
Only it was Miss Richmond's Academy.
Miss Richmond's Academy. But was it on the campus?
No.
No.
No, it was down on the corner of State and Gilman.
State and Gilman. Mm-hmm.
And Miss Sue had the elementary children, and Miss Charlotte taught the upper classes, the Richmond people, and Mrs. Nafziger, Monona Nafziger, was, her family was connected with the Richmonds, and so, as I say, I went to
Fool's Retreat
until I graduated at the academy, and Miss Sue, I can remember so well, the children from the LaFollette families came in their pony carts.
That's quite a sight, I should think. In from Maple Bluff.
Yes. And Miss Sue was trying to get installed at least the sense of responsibility in the young children. And the youngest, LaFollette, one morning we found we couldn't get into the building because he had the key and he wasn't going to let anybody in until she kissed him.
So Miss Richmond?
Yes. That was the young LaFollette. And Bill, that is.
Young Phil. Phil. Well, those must have been interesting days, and
Yes.
You must have. Then, did you go on to the university, or
Yes.
Yes,
In the university here.
yes, in the study science mostly, or not at all?
Yes.
Yes.
I was interested in biology in general.
Yes.
But I forget some pleasant things that came before even that was the drives around the Willow Drive with the rented horse, and that was a treat as far as I was concerned.
Yes.
But I graduated before the university took over the academy.
The academy, yes.
It lasted until, well, that was the last year, I guess, when I graduated. And my father was, I remember
The commencement speaker, or?
Yes, he
Yes.
was the commencement speaker. We had, of course, made good friends, and we walked mostly to school from out here on the heights, and had a very delightful high school, really.
Yes, I should think that would have been a very good way to learn. I was going to ask you also about within your homes. I'm sure that they were comfortable, and some of them really quite fine, but you must not have had a lot of the so-called modern conveniences we have today. You had the windmill and water from the well, and I suppose laundry was done at home.
I don't know.
You remember?
You
You didn't have to help
yes,
anyone,
no.
obviously.
And we used rainwater for that. And,
Shall I turn this off for just a moment? Having an interruption here, we'll take this opportunity to turn the tape over and start on tape 1, side 2. This is an interview with Ruth Chase Noland in September of 1982 by Julie Schwenn for Historic Madison. This is tape 1, side 2. Mrs. Noland, we were talking about the comforts of your home inside, and I was wondering whether you probably, with a family your size, you didn't have to have live-in help. I know that some of the families on the heights with...
well, we did have maids that lived in the house.
Yes.
And in fact, one of them is still alive and was a good friend of mine. When she worked for us until she got married, and her sister was married to somebody on the agricultural school too, but I can't remember all the details. But what I was going to say about Miss Richmond's school.
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Nafziger was related to the Richmonds.
I see.
And she could give you an awful lot about Madison in the early days.
Yes, we'll follow up on that. Someone also said that some of you people here in the Heights shared a handyman. I've forgotten his name. He would work in various people's gardens, helping their gardens. You don't remember? Probably by the time you came, you weren't paying much attention to things like the younger children might have.
Well, it was after the wars, and people were what was it when they
had victory gardens.
Man of the Week who would go around and work in the yards.
Man of the Week, did you say?
He was they were trying to make work for the people who were very hard up after the war.
Oh. This would have been in the early around 1920, some around in there.
I imagine so.
But
I remember it too well. But
do you think you all had vegetable gardens?
oh yes,
Chickens? Maybe.
yes,
And chickens.
that's right. I had a buff Arlington, which was very fun. And I also had a dog, and we had cats.
The dogs could roam freely without leashes, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know. Gypsy was on pretty well restricted, but when I was born in Illinois, the cat was the part of the family who helped bring me up. The old lady, we called her.
Oh.
And she didn't like to hear me cry when I was a little girl. And so she nipped me and trained me that way.
That's interesting. That's rather unique. Part of your tutoring, early education.
And we were very fond of our cats, of course. And it was when I wanted a pony, and we compromised, and they got me a dog, an Airedale puppy from Canada.
Imported dog?
Canadian puppy, thoroughbred, and we had her for 14 years.
So she came from Illinois to Madison with you, and lived in Mrs. Pierce's boarding house?
Well, that was a strange thing. When we moved into Madison, we didn't have any place to live in while the house was being built, and so part of the time we lived in Mrs. Pierce's boarding house.
Yes.
And I remember one unpleasant, really, event was that we, at one breakfast time, somebody said that there was something the matter with one of the men, and we found he cut his throat.
Ooh.
So that was an exciting experience.
Yes.
And that was back. My mother was ill when we came to Madison, quite a good deal, and so we had to have a doctor, and the doctor was Dr. Louis Head.
Head. H-E-A-D.
Yes. And he introduced, he had a daughter, and he saw that I was very lonely, a stranger, and so his daughter was Catherine Bradenburg.
I know the name, the family.
And they were a bit older than I, but they were very nice to me and helped me to get acquainted.
Good.
And then the history department, of course, my father was at that time teaching in the university, in the academy where he had been teaching.
When he first came, I see.
And we lived for another part of the year in the rectory of Grace Church.
Huh? Down on the square. Now, what about, was your family, were they church people? Were they of the Episcopalian church, or did you just happen to live in the rectory?
Well, I don't know exactly, but they were Baptists and Unitarians.
I see.
But
so where did you go to services on Sunday? You as a girl? Where did you go to any place? Baptist or Unitarian or both?
Mrs. the rector's wife wanted to bring me up in the right way, and so she took me to lectures on ancient history, and I got a real acquaintance with those things. And then at the end of the year that we stayed, well, then we moved out, of course, to our new home.
In the suburbs.
In the suburbs, but on the way from Chicago, we left the cats at the people who bought the house from us, but the dog, my beloved dog, was to stay in a boarding home, so to speak, and between Chicago and Wisconsin, and she was lost.
Oh.
And I don't know how she happened to be lost, but they couldn't find her.
At the kennel.
Yes, she jumped the fence. And
looking for you, probably.
Yes, exactly. And we advertised and hunted for her for several months, but finally, somebody out on the farm saw our ad in the paper and from Chicago, and so we got her back.
Ah, good. But that was after some months.
Yes, it was.
That you were distressed.
I was indeed. And when we got her out of it, she was in a crate coming in by a train, and she was so glad to see us that
She remembered you.
oh yes,
Precisely.
indeed. She just tore at the crate till her mouth was bloody before she could get her out.
That's a devoted dog.
Yes, and I was always so devoted to her. And my mother and father, of course, took a lot of care of her as well when I was in school and so on. But I was thinking of one of the things going back, the earliest music that, well, we had a piano, still got the piano.
Oh, this one? Great.
But was a phonograph, not a Victor one, but that was something new to me, the phonograph records.
And those big, thick records, yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Did you have music lessons?
Yes, I had music lessons, but they didn't pay.
Stay with me.
So,
there was not only, I'm sure, a great deal of social life in the Heights and cultural activities. You
Yes.
wrote, I think, about the was it called University Heights Poetry Club?
yes.
That your mother would have been a
Yes.
member of that, I suppose.
Yes, mother and father.
Mhm.
And we had many interesting meetings. The poetry club is still, it's just died out from the old age, but I'm supposed to be writing a review of the life of the poetry club. No, I hope I'll do it sometime.
You haven't started
Well,
yet,
we've
but
got
you have
some-
some notes, I'll bet.
Well, my husband turned over to the Historical Society a certain number of volumes on the Poetry Club.
Oh, good. But you're supposed to write some little short piece,
Yes.
relatively short piece.
So,
Were you married soon after your university years, or not till later?
Well, I was a graduate student in biology, and my future husband's office mate was also in biology, and we knew the I'm getting tangled up, but the chairman of the biology department at that time was Professor Geyer. And he was a well-known research.
I see.
And chairman of the department. That was an earlier time, really, before we were married. But I remember the rabbits that they were injecting in their ears, and Dr. Geyer and Betty Smith was his assistant, and I was full-time assistant in the department.
A research or teaching assistant, or a little of both?
Assistant.
Teaching.
But Dr. Geyer, I heard him go by the office. My office, I would do a good deal of the record work beside. And he said, "This is my secretary's office." I didn't quite appreciate that.
Well, it's a term that's often used to cover a lot of things that really aren't quite within that realm.
Yes.
But it was through those connections that you met your husband. So have you ever lived away from Madison from the time you first came up from Illinois?
No, I haven't lived away, but I have traveled somewhat.
Yes.
I went to Woods Hole and was a student there 2 summers. And
great. During your graduate years?
Yes. I think it was sort of I don't know what you call it, but we had an opportunity to go there anyhow.
Oh, I bet that was an exciting, rewarding time. Yes.
And the two roommates, office mates, became husband and wife. We married. She from the biology department, and I too from biology. She's still my best friend.
Good. That's a long time. Yes. That would have been when in the 30s or early 30s. You think you were at Woods Hole, or when would you think that was?
Yes, I guess it was about that time. So
there was something else I wanted to ask about churches, and you've told me of your checkered background, but they were all downtown then, I guess, the churches, were they? No, there were some out
yes,
in this area, in the
there
suburbs.
was the Unitarian Church.
Yeah, but that was down on the square, just off the square, or on the square then, wasn't it? The Unitarian Church.
Yes, it was.
And the Baptist, you spoke of Baptist connections. I think there probably was, their church was just off the square, I guess. I guess I'm really ignorant of
Well,
this.
I'm not sure. Yes, the Baptist church was in Morgan Park, so that's in Illinois.
But and of course the rectory, the Grace Church and its rectory were where they still are on the square.
That's right.
And the Episcopal Church over here on Regent Street was not built when you were a young person, I'm sure. What about politics? Do you remember, were there political discussions in your home and among your friends, or were you not particularly a political person? Well, I suppose with your studies you really didn't have time to pay much attention.
No, I don't. It's funny, I don't remember the politics except for the Follett family that we
Yes. Well, that was enough to keep
keep us.
buzzing.
Yes.
That's good.
And the most interesting thing to me, it's just happened. My granddaughter-in-law is taking English, she's Spanish, and she's studying English, and I asked her where she was going for her lessons, and she said, well, I'm going to the corner of State and Gilman. And I said, where are you going? And she said, well, we go upstairs, and there's a big room up there, and we have our lessons there. And I realized that was where the academy,
Miss Richmond's
Academy had been, and it's funny how things come together.
Yes.
And
that's interesting.
yes, I'm afraid I'm keeping you.
No, but I was thinking we really we've covered a lot of ground, but we haven't tapped or taped all of your memories, I'm sure. Do you think of anything else we ought to be sure to get down? I think you've really given us a very good feeling of what's really been a long life here.
Yes,
in University Heights.
For me, it's the only place I've really lived.
I'm glad it was ready for you to come. I guess the first homes were built in just a very few years before you came. I think I had it written down someplace. I think the Buell home must have been built about 1894 or 5, and the Hillyers on Kendall at 1895, and the Knowltons built in 94 and 95.
And the
Ely's they had bought the land. He was the first one to buy land here, I've read, Professor Ely, and the house was commissioned in 1896, but I don't have an exact date for when it was built, but I suppose it was just after that. And the Whitsons, they apparently built their house in 1906. I don't know where that house is.
Well, it's over on Arlington.
I see. Oh, yes, it's the house. It's 1920 Arlington. Yes, of course. And then, of course, the Bradley home, the Louis Sullivan home, was 1909. So they were just after just about a little later than your home.
I remember playing on the hill there right across the street from that place. There's some nice big rocks, and I played up there. That was before it was in the early time.
First, you probably quite soon after you moved out into your new home, I suppose. Well, it must have been a pleasant childhood, and early and later years as well. We're really
good life, at least for me.
Yeah. Well, you've had an interesting, worthwhile life. I know a few of the things you've been involved in. I hope you come up with that poetry club resume some rainy day.
Several of the books are already in the Historical Society. That's his. And Gladys Borchess was in the poetry.
Oh, yes.
And she's still going strong.
Yes, I've seen her a time or two in the last year, and I sometimes meet with some of the women in the neighborhood who read books together, or they read books, and sometimes they talk about those books when they get together. And sometimes it seems to me they don't talk so much about the books, but about other things that are just as interesting. And she is in that group. She and I don't know whether others you know, Mildred Richards, and our neighbor, and Kay Larson, who's next down in, I guess, what was the Miles house, if I remember, my history is right. And
the McGilvary house.
The McGilvary house is
next to Stevens.
Yes, on going on the corner. Yes, a family named Miller now lives there.
Is that Midge Miller?
No, Midge Miller was catty-corner from there, and they've moved. They moved out a little farther, and now they're. I think she's having to move back into her district because they redistricted everything. They got it all messed up. Did you get your absentee ballot?
I did, and I voted for Midge Miller.
Good, I intend to do the same. Well, thanks much again. We're going to put these tapes together in some good place, possibly. Well, they'll first be the property of the Historic Madison, and then a decision is to be made as to where they be lodged. Perhaps in a special section in the public library, where people from metropolitan Madison can have good access to them if they go through the proper procedures. But I'll let you know how this turns out, whether we have a winner or whether I've blown it. The machine keeps running, but we'll edit out this last part where we've just been chatting.
But Dorothy Nafziger.
Yes.
And Professor Nafziger was very.
Well, I hope I haven't tired you.
No.
When I talked to you, I thought you were a little hesitant, and I didn't want to push you, but still, I thought once we sat down together, we could make a go. We could make a go of it.
Yes. I hope so.
I'm glad you are being able to stay in your home. That's the thing to do if you possibly can, isn't it?
Yes, and they made it possible for me, my good friends. This floor is mine, and with my cats, and there's a porch, screened porch, and so it's all. I can't go down to the basement. I can't go upstairs. But I just